So if I may, this year this code cycle, we're doing it a little bit differently. Normally, like the chief or one project leader will present the whole thing, but there's been so many staff involved over the last 2 years with these potential recommendations for changes. So each of the project leaders is going to present their sections of changes. In the essence of time, there are a lot of clarifications, tweakings, lining references to permits and things like that that we did not include within the presentation. All of it is to realign the game code for consistent language and clarity throughout. And that kind of part of it and the reorganization is at the tail end of the presentation. So with that, and I just also want to add too, this is the most game code recommendations that have been vetted through the public than we have ever done so before. It's an important whole package. Staff really did a deep dive and looked for every which way we could align seasons, align bag limits, even aligning the reporting, harvest reporting for a variety of species. So they really did an outstanding job of taking a really fresh look at the game code and trying to simplify it. And really, I think it's a pretty phenomenal accomplishment. You know, whatever ends up moving forward or not, just all the work that is involved here. And then all the extra efforts that went into getting particularly the deer out through the forums with a survey, a stakeholder meeting, Farm Bureau. Like there was a lot of extra effort, and that had staff 2 or 3 times a week going to nightly meetings on top of working full days. So impressive job to all of them. That, Jody?
Yep. Okay. And I'm just going to piggyback on what Lisa said. Some of you might not know them, so I want to publicly recognize and thank the deer team. So we have Megan Mills, who is the Northern Region deer biologist. She's been on just about 3 years. Megan McCafferty is the Southern Region deer biologist. She's been on just about 3 years. And then we have Brian Shum, who is our deer outreach biologist, also our deer data guide. Just about 2 years, if I didn't say that. So yeah, I want to publicly thank them because like Lisa said, it was a huge data dive, not only into harvest historically, but also hunter behavior and purchasing behavior. This was the bulk of what we've done for the past like 3 years. And honestly, if it wasn't for them, I'm not sure this would have gotten done. It was very short turnarounds, getting the data back to management and upper staff. So they did a great job. So they should be proud of themselves because I'm very proud of them. So just how this is going to work as far as deer is concerned, I'm going to briefly review what we've done up until this point and then go into the survey. Lisa mentioned it before. We only looked at the survey results that go back directly to some of the suggested changes that were under consideration. At another meeting for council, we can go through all of the survey questions, which included a lot of hunter behavior and general questions of deer hunters. So as Lisa mentioned, this game code process is twofold. One is an overall simplification of regulations, not just deer, but regulations in general. And then the recodification where we're reorganizing the current code so it reads much easier and is much more concise. So it's twofold. That's the process that we're going this time. So just to review of why deer went down the long and sometimes painful road of simplification of the deer regs. Those of you that have been around a long time, the deer season used to be basically an archery season, a 6-day firearm season, and maybe a couple doe days filled in. But as land use changed across New Jersey and development increased and the human population increased, the deer population increased, To adjust our management strategies and goals, we added in seasons. So we added in permit seasons, we lengthened seasons, we upped bag limits, sometimes up to 2 at a time. We added youth days. So many of the different structures are now in 9 current reg sets with different openings and closing of days. We added in the youth days, as I said. We have an APR, which is an antler point restriction regulation in some zones, but not all. And then there's confusion between the hunter's choice buck, where the buck bag limit for 6A firearm used to be $2. We added it in 2008 or 9, where they had to choose between a second buck during 6-day or 1 during permit shotgun, and that has still caused major confusion with the hunters. So not only was deer getting these complaints and concerns and comments from hunters, but almost all of the bureaus, law enforcement was getting it, information education was getting it. So this is why we decided to simplify the regs for hunters. So with all of that data that we looked at, we came up with 3 areas where we could simplify regulations without sacrificing our management goals and strategies. So those 3 areas that we're going to discuss were overall simplification of the regs, where we're going to either eliminate or combine regulation sets and zones. We're going to align season date structure, so some things open consistently on the same days and end on the same days. We are going, suggested to reinstate the 7 buck bag limit. We had it back in up until 2008 or 9, and we're just gonna reinstate that 7 buck back into the regs. We are looking at possible expansion of the multi-zone permit, which I'll go into later, but well, I can go into it now. It's basically, the multi-zone permit applies to just reg set 7 and 8 currently. It allows hunters to buy a multi-zone permit for the price of 2 permits, and then they can hunt in any zone in that regulation set. Currently, it's only in the higher set, 7 and 8. The expansion was possibly into the other reg sets. And then the last one was to eliminate the APR, which is the antler point restriction. So in the zones that have an APR restriction, it's the bucks have to have 3 points on at least one side. So those are the 3 that we identified. So as Lisa also mentioned, this has been going on probably 2 years, this whole process. We have had multiple meetings. The main 3 changes, areas of change, and then all of that data that led up to making those changes was presented at the September council meeting. After that, there was a huge outreach push where we tried to get this information out as quickly and as thoroughly as possible. So we had 3 in-person hunter forums, 1 in the north at the Peak West Wildlife Management Area, 1 in the central region over at the Eco Complex, and 1 in the southern region at Stockton University. We went to 19 active chapters of the Federation meetings. And as Lisa said, some of them were multiple in a week, and we hit most of them within a 2-month time frame. In addition to that, we met with the Deer Committee of the Federation, and then I also presented at the Federation convention in February. We also presented internally to the Farm Bureau, and then I made the presentation again to the full Farm Bureau at their convention. We did have a stakeholders meeting, which I think was set up by the Federation Deer Committee. And then there was also other stakeholders that were invited. So UBNJ was there and a couple other people were there. And then after all of that, we put the hunter regulation survey out. It went out April 8th. It closed in the morning of May 2nd. We sent it out to 81,198 hunters that had purchased a license in the past 5 years. So out of those 81,000, we got 9,876. So when we sent it out to the 81,000, those were the licensed buyers that had valid email addresses. So it went out by email. But in addition to that, we did post things on social media and on the website with links to try to capture some of those hunters that didn't have valid email addresses, to try to get it to as many hunters as possible. So out of those 81,000, we got 9,876 respondents. That's about a 12% response rate, which is very good. We did do the cleanup, so we checked every CID that came in under the survey, and we compared that to the CIDs in the electronic licensing system. And anybody that didn't have a valid CID, they were taken out. Duplicate surveys, because we wanted hunters to only take it once, so if there was duplicate CID numbers, they were also excluded. And then we wanted the survey to be complete, so all those surveys had to be completed. So when we removed all of that chunk, we ended up with 7,886 that were valid and complete responses from valid CID numbers, which is still a 9.7% response rate, which is very, very good. Again, the average time to complete the survey was 23 minutes, and we know that it was long, but there was a lot of information that we were trying to capture, and a lot of folks did it. So we also wanted to compare some demographics and some hunter characteristics to what we got back on the survey versus what the entire data set looks like with all license holders. So on the left is all license holders. On the right is the survey respondents. So this is by the zones. So by zone where they said they hunted, it's pretty comparable. It's almost a mirror image. So we know that we got respondents from everyone that is a license holder for the same percentage and proportion. The age distribution, if you look at the overall shape of that graph, it's pretty much the same. Obviously, there are on the left-hand side, there are some older hunters, like into their 90s, that are still buying hunting licenses. Those sort of dropped off after 80 for the survey respondents. And then there was also sort of a chunk between 20 and 30-year-olds that didn't respond to the survey. But overall, it's a pretty good representation of what the actual hunting population is. So this is the number of hunters with whatever the average annual harvest was. So again, it's pretty mirrored. The harvest of the overall hunters is that graph on the left, and the survey response is the graph on the right, and the shape of it is pretty much the same. So the first area that we're going to discuss is combining of the regulation sets. As I said, we have 9 regulation sets, which is depicted in the map on the left. The one on the right is what the proposed change that was under consideration. So moving from 9 regs to 3 regulations. And that's the distribution on that map on the right. Low, medium, and high depicts the low is the more conservative regs, the medium is sort of middle ground, and then the high obviously is the most liberal bag limit and season length. So that was the breakup between those 3 reg sets. This is the current regulation set structure. So you can see it's 9 reg sets, multiple lengths, multiple different bag limits, and a wide range of total days on the right of how long those reg sets are open.
If I can just explain what that. So fall bow, top row, 28-1, what's that refer to? Just so everyone knows.
Is there a pointer?
Yeah, it's the red button. Just so people know.
Yep, so for fall bow, for the reg set 0, which is the most conservative. So the first number means the number of days that the season is open. So this one is open 28 days. And the bag limit is 1 deer. And then going down the line, as these get more liberal, there's no zones in set 1 right now, but it would be 28 days. The bag limit is 2 deer. And then going down, reg set 8 is the most liberal. So it's the fall bow season's open 49 days with an unlimited bag limit, which is the U. And then the 2 means that you can shoot 2 at a time before you have to report them. And then depending on what season, everything, changes. 6 day is always the same. It's 6 days, obviously it's a 6-day firearm season, and the bag limit is $2. Yep, you're welcome. Yeah. So the structure that's recommended under these 3 reg sets, so the low reg set would follow what the current reg set 3 regs and structure is. The medium is following what reg set 5 is, and high is following what the current reg set 8 is. These mean that all of these zones that are in red are moving up in a reg set. So currently they're at 0, 1, or 2, and they're going to be put into the reg set 3 regs. If it's green, it's moving down. So just for instance, zone 5 and 25, they're moving down a reg set to set 5. And then if they're black, they're staying exactly where they were. So they're already in reg set 3, 5, or 8, and they're staying in where they are moving forward, or it's proposed. And then these are the season structure again. So it's much more aligned. There's bigger differences between each of these reg sets. Some of these other reg sets only had a difference of 5 days, and it was in a different reg set. So these are more aligned with what our management goals are, more conservative, middle ground, and most liberal, which is the longest seasons. This down here is just what it would look like according to the 25-26 calendar. So you'll see that a lot of the seasons are starting on the same day. Depending on where they are, they're going to end on the same day. But it's much more aligned and easier to understand. So just to recap, all of these has a reminder of what the feedback was that we got at the forums. And this was basically just on a show of hands. So we would present all of the data and then we would ask at the forums, what's your opinion on this? So for combining those reg sets, all 3 of the forums came back positive. They were all in favor of combining and simplifying regulation sets. This is what was based on the survey. So the strongly agree, neither agree, disagree, disagree, or strongly disagree. And this question was asked to everybody in a general fashion, we just pulled it out. We didn't compare it back to where they said they hunted. That's in the next slide. So overall, the strongly agree and agree far outweigh the disagree or strongly disagree. So it seems from this question, the survey respondents are in favor of moving forward with combining the reg sets and reducing the number of reg sets. This one, we did pull out. So any zone, any respondent that said they hunted in any of the zones that are in these reg sets, this is what they said. And then same thing for the medium and the high. So if you said you hunted in a medium reg set zone, these were your answers, and the same thing for the high. So, excuse me, overall, it's pretty much the same thing that, the majority, if you add up, the strongly agree, strongly agree, strongly agree, they're pretty much all in favor of moving forward with this for their individual sets and zones. So this, I guess, most recent request came in to align the permit muzzleloader and permit shotgun seasons to run concurrently after 6-day firearm through the end of the season. So currently after 6-day firearm, permit muzzleloader and shotgun have different dates, even within the high reg set. And some of the reason for that is to give the permit muzzleloader hunters two free weeks where there's not competition with other firearm hunters. So it's strictly just the permit muzzleloader season. And then after that, the permit shotgun season comes back in. So the request came in to align those after 6-day firearm. I think this came in pretty late. So we're looking at the data now to look at how that would look if the council decides to move forward with this recommendation. So we don't have a lot of data for or against this at this point. We will give that to them as soon as they have it. The next one was the multi-zone permit expansion. Like I said, it's currently in Reg Set 7 and 8, which pretty much includes all of these zones in red. And at the forums, so the recommendation was to, or the question was to, do we want to expand the multi-zone permit to other Reg Sets? Originally, we had suggested that it stays in the high set. It goes into the medium set, and we originally didn't say it was we didn't want it in the low set. But basically, again, you purchase one multi-zone permit for $56 and it allows you to hunt in any of these zones in that reg set. So when we asked this at the forums, North and Central said positive, which we figured anyway, but even the Southern region guys wanted it for their reg sets and their zones. So we asked the question in the survey, what is your opinion on making multi-zone permits more widely available? And overwhelmingly, it's positive to make them available for high, medium, and low regulation sets. So that was the information that we got off of that question. The next thing was to reinstate the buck bag limit to 7 from 6. And again, we used to have that, and we're just asking to put it back in to eliminate some of the confusion. So if council decides to move forward with this, hunters would no longer need to forfeit their permit shotgun buck tag if they harvest 2 bucks during the 6-day firearm season. And it maintains an equal opportunity for hunters to harvest a buck across each of the 6 seasons, as well as each of the weapon types. Which we worked really hard on that buck high to have an equal opportunity for any weapon type. And just for some background on the data, so despite having the opportunity to harvest more bucks, most successful hunters, 99.2% of them, harvest 3 or fewer bucks. So the vast majority of buck hunters shoot 3 or less. The reverse of that is less than 5% of deer hunters in New Jersey participate in every deer season. So less than 5% of deer hunters possess the maximum number of buck tags. So basically what that means, even with the current bag limit at 6 now, a hunter only has that opportunity to shoot 6 bucks if they hunt with every weapon type. So in 2019, which was the last normal year before COVID, we pulled those numbers out. So only 33,000 of our deer hunters purchased either an all-around license or a firearm and a bow license. So that already cut that number down to 33,000. In addition to that, you would then have to purchase the bow buck permit, the muzzleloader buck permit, and the shotgun buck permit. And out of those 33,000 that purchased both of those license types, only about 4,500 also purchased those 3 buck tags. So the bag limit of 6 was now only available to 4,500 hunters. And in 2019, I think 6 individual hunters actually harvested every single buck. So the number of hunters that are harvesting these 6 bucks is very, 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 very small. And that's pretty consistent. I think last year it might have been 10. It's always like around, not even in the double digits. The majority are shooting 3 or less.
I can add, this seems to be the most confusing part that we have a hard time conveying to hunters, that it's nothing about increasing the amount of bucks harvested. It's about just making it simple and straightforward that everybody has an equal opportunity to get a buck during each season. A lot of folks were asking for 2 bucks, you can take any time, which we know then most of them will be taken very early in the bow season. So this was just following that continuity of providing each person for each season the opportunity to harvest a buck.
So when we asked this question at the forums, North and Central said no, they did not want to go from 6 to 7. In fact, they wanted, as Lisa said, way less bucks. Central said, yeah, it's fine. So we asked the question in the survey, how do you feel about increasing the buck bag limit? And this one was really close. It's the ones, so this on the left here says, I'm comfortable, if I can read it. I'm comfortable with the buck limit increasing to 7, slight majority. I would rather the buck limit stay the same, a slight decrease in that number. And then this one says, I would rather see the buck bag limit decreased. We didn't specify a number. They just said they wanted it decreased. Came in 3rd. That's the info from the survey. And the last one is antler point restrictions. So antler point restrictions, again, was in certain zones, hunters could only harvest bucks that had 3 points on one side. Antler point restriction is part of a broader quality deer management strategy or idea, where you're saving the younger bucks so that they can grow bigger. You're also increasing the antlerless harvest to free up resources on the ground so those deer that are left can have a better food source to produce bigger bucks. The reason that we were suggesting to get rid of it was that it complicates regulations. It's only in a certain number of zones. It applies to youths only on youth day, not outside on the regular seasons. If they're a youth hunter, they would still have to abide by this rule. The antlerless harvest was decreasing at a higher rate than non-APR zones. So those hunters in APR zones are not harvesting antlerless deer as they should be. It's a deterrent for new hunters. So either youths or new hunters coming into the sport. They're being told they can't shoot certain deer because of this regulation. And, we're losing hunters at a quick rate, and we want to try to, get them to be successful so that they stick with it. It lessens the the quality gene pool. And then there's a potential for spread of disease or increased deer vehicle accidents. Younger deer tend to be the ones that are dispersing further. And with that, there's a potential spread of disease such as CWD, which again, we don't have, but we probably will get at some point. And then also there's the potential for deer vehicle collisions. So that's the background on APR. So again, when we went to the forums, by a show of hands, we asked how the people that were there at the meeting felt, and North and Central, absolutely not. But not surprising how they feel, because there's only APR zones in the north and there's APR zones in the south. So in both of those regions, they like it and they want it. Central didn't really care, and they said, yeah, you can get rid of it because there's no APR zones in the central region. So they don't really have an opinion either way. So when we asked this question, this was an overall general question that every respondent got, regardless of where they said they hunted. And this is the strongly in favor, this is in favor, and this is neutral. This was opposed and strongly opposed. So, you add up the strongly in favor and in favor, and even with the neutrals, it's, the majority is they want it and they like it. So then we decided to pull those out based on where they said they hunted. So if the respondent did not select a zone where they hunted that is not in an APR reg set, this was the responses. So even if for hunters that do not hunt in an APR zone, strongly in favor, neutral. Still a lot more than the opposed and strongly opposed. Not surprisingly, in hunters that said they did hunt in an APR zone, strongly in favor was much higher, in favor, neutral, and then opposed and strongly opposed.
Do you look at whether they're hunting on public or private land versus regarding?
We did ask that question, but it's not in.
Okay, I was just saying.
So then we wanted to see what it was if they hunted in an APR zone, and we grouped it by north and south, because like we said, there's a group of zones in the north and there's a group of zones in the south. So the southern APR zone respondents strongly in favor. Neutral was a little high. But definitely, it still outweighs the opposed and strongly opposed. And then hunting in the northern zones, same thing. Strongly in favor, neutral was a little higher, and then opposed and strongly opposed. So even when we looked at it, by region, we're still pretty much getting the same results. Is this meeting open for discussion?
Yeah, this.
Okay. Okay.
We kind of broke it up, so
Yeah.
we didn't get too far into
No.
each section.
Any questions for Deer Project, council? Yeah, we've seen this stuff over and over again,
Couldn't
so
say that it's nothing new so far.
we're good to move on to
All
it.
right, thank you.
Additional considerations.
More Deer stuff to talk about?
Oh,
Oh, Jody.
sorry.
One more, Jody.
haha.
To staff's credit, because we had a game committee meeting yesterday.
There is
We
new-
had to add some additional
slides.
slides.
So additional considerations. If council decides to move forward with not getting rid of the APR regulation, there's another consideration where youth hunters could be exempt from that regulation throughout all seasons, not just the youth days. In addition to that, we got another recommendation there's a union, let me just back up. Union County has a very solid deer management program. That Union County program is within Zone 13, which is an APR zone. So we got the letters asking council to either remove that APR regulation from Union County properties or to change the boundary of that zone to exclude Union County, which would put it into Zone 36, where the only difference is it doesn't have an APR regulation. So we're looking at this to see what that means. It's, obviously up to council to decide if we want to move forward with either of these things. And I don't know.
There's a map.
Okay.
Like that.
So this is the portion of Zone 13 that is Union County, which would then get put into the adjacent Zone 36.
Jody, I have a question.
Yeah, let me just see. Okay, I just want to make sure that's it for deer. Okay.
Regarding Union County, we discussed that pretty extensive yesterday at the committee meeting. And on the way home, I was thinking, why? Because it's going to come up again. Somewhere, some town or somebody in an APR zone is going to have a problem. And why couldn't either the council or the division, I don't know where it would have to originate from, exempt county parks and municipalities and APR zones from the APR restriction for deer management?
I believe that's probably on the table. I should say that the reason why this came in was that the hunters that are managing that program, deer management program in Union County, are saying that they can't meet their management goals because of this regulation.
It's the odd thing with APR in those zones where we're trying to reduce the herd, which they're properly pointing out. But we are looking at a variety of options to then come back to the council so they can understand all the options of possibly achieving this. Whether it's boundary restrictions, looking at management restrictions, or working through a community-based, or perhaps working through deer management plans. So we're investigating the options through the rules and the statutes, and we'll come back to the council or the game committee really more appropriately and go over the different options to them.
Jody?
Definitely appreciate you pointing that out, Ed, as another avenue to take a look at.
Is there any property in that zone that's open to public hunting, or is it strictly within the parks under that community-based program?
Yeah, so the majority is taken off of county or municipal property in Union County under that program. So that program, they're allowed to shoot deer off of county and some municipal owned property.
Right.
The vast majority. Very small is private.
But it's
But
not
none of
open
it's-
to any hunter.
No?
That I don't, we didn't look at it.
There's no WMA, but like 64 out of 69 deer. The rest, I believe, was on private property.
Right, but they want to know, is it still those same hunters on that private property? Or, yeah, that I don't know. We'll have to look into that.
Yeah, as far as I know, there's zero public place that I could say, oh, you know what, I think I'm
Yeah, I
going
don't
to
know.
go
It
down
would
Union County to hunt
depend,
today.
yeah, I mean, it would depend on what the municipal ordinances are. And if you happen, if there was no ordinance against a discharge of a weapon or a firearm, a bow or a firearm, and you owned enough property, you might be able to shoot something off of your own property. I don't know that. I'll have to look into
But
it.
there's no public
Didn't we see
property.
only 5 deer taken elsewhere within that county?
Yeah,
There's
it's
only
very-
5 deer, Jim.
Yeah,
It's very, very small.
so I'm saying, there's no place that the average guy is going to say, well, get in the car and go down there and see,
Yeah.
maybe I can get lucky today.
Exactly.
It's not going to happen
Right, the
because you have to have
majority-
access.
Right.
There is zero
Access problem.
public property.
The majority of deer that are taken is in this program, a vast majority.
Yeah, and the rest is taken on strictly private property.
Yeah, but even that is a small number. Yeah. Anything else?
Any further discussion?
Just flip the next one, Jody, because it's relative to your state firearm. This also came up just yesterday.
You want me to cover this?
Yeah.
Okay. So this came up yesterday to require bow hunters to wear hunter orange during the 6-day firearm season. So there is an overlap on a lot of our seasons. One of them is 6-day firearm. The permit bow season is opened in some zones during 6-day firearm season, and the request came in to require those bow hunters to wear hunter orange. That was another one that came in yesterday. Any discussion?
Gentlemen, any discussion?
I think it's,
To me, it's a no-brainer, but
Makes sense. We all thought it made sense. Yeah.
Ah, there is more.
give you a break on that one.
We've made multiple changes to this presentation. Another thing that came in was Great Swamp. It's currently its own zone, DMZ 38. It's surrounded entirely by Zone 13. We were approached by Great Swamp National Wildlife personnel to eliminate that special zone number and be incorporated into Zone 13. Great Swamp would still control the number of hunters they have because even now they require a special access permit through Great Swamp. So even though it would go from a very restrictive regs, and that's the reason for DMZ, the reason why Great Swamp is its own zone to begin with was because they had a huge EHD outbreak probably 25 years ago, and it decimated the herd. So because they were within a zone that has very liberal hunting seasons, they wanted to be able to really, really, really restrict what they were doing and how many people could hunt that property. They've done a great job. The deer herd is coming back. So now they want to be incorporated into Zone 13, but because of the way the regs are in the game code is, they can make it as strict as possible within their own regs because they're their own land owner. So it's just eliminating a zone, but they're still going to be able to control the deer management and their strategies and the number of hunters that are in there. In addition to that.
Jody, what would
Yes.
that mean for APR then, if they got rolled into?
That's the thing. So yes, so Zone 13 has an APR regulation. I don't know what that would mean. If council comes up with a way to exclude them from that regulation, they could do that for them as well. And I believe they would like that. Yeah. Anything else on Great Swamp?
Anything else?
One more. Joint Base McGuire Dix Lakehurst. When Joint Base, when they were their own entities, it was Fort Dix and Lakehurst, Army, Navy. Now that they're Joint Base together, they were their own zones. 37 was Fort Dix, which was Army, 53 is Lakehurst, which is Navy. And they had their own sets of regulations and their own requirements as far as access by civilian personnel or even just regular civilians and, active military, retired military on base. We've been trying to align both of their seasons because now it's combined under the broader Joint Base umbrella, but they still would like to align. And then it came up recently, Megan McCafferty had a meeting with them last week. And now they're asking maybe to just have it be one zone, which we don't necessarily have a problem with because we're already trying to align their seasons anyway. But we just need letters and authorization from each of their commanding officers and then the general commanding officer that oversees the whole Joint Base. Just to make sure that everybody's on the same page and that they're okay with moving forward to have it be one zone. They still will control access on both of their properties, but they can do that internally.
Any questions?
Makes sense.
Pretty simple.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Jody.
Moving.
All right. Council is proposing to close the fall either sex season for turkeys, declining spring harvest, declining fall either sex harvest. Other states, similar concerns, changing bag limits, closing seasons, restricting season lengths. And we want to protect our hens. Dead hens cannot lay eggs. So this is our spring harvest. As you can see, it's slowly declining. 2002 is where this graph starts. This was our heyday. This was our big spring gobbler harvest. And it continues to go down. We use spring harvest data to gauge population trends. Here's our fall either sex turkey harvest is the blue line going back from when it started in 97. And it's slowly going down. The red line underneath is our percentage of hens that were in the harvest. Oddly enough, from 97 to 2016, hen turkeys made up 50% of the fall either sex harvest. And something happened in 2016 when it dropped, and it has stayed right about 30% of the harvest since. $2,254 individual turkey hunters participated in the 2023 fall either sex turkey season. 2,948 permits were sold for last fall season. 50 youth, 879 farmer, and a little over 2,000 for the general. Revenue was approximately $42,999. If you look, 349 individuals purchased 2 or more permits. So these are what I'm going to call our diehard fall turkey hunters. So we have about 349 diehard fall turkey hunters in the state. And remember that permits for the fall are also turkey hunting area specific, and you're only allowed 1 bird per day per permit, no matter how many permits you have. Ammunition changes. Council proposing to allow 410s and 28 gauge. Required shot with a minimum density of 18 grams per cubic centimeter for 410s and 28 gauge. An example of that is TSS, tungsten super shot. Remove turkey blinds from any wildlife management area at the end of the legal hunting hours each day. And turkey blinds must be labeled with a CID number. Discussion.
Any questions, any discussion points?
I have a question.
Yes.
Eliminating the fall either sex. Do you have how many farmers took those birds in the fall?
Out of the 800 and some that
Yeah,
bought permits.
879
I'd have to
permits.
look. So we harvest right around 100 birds each fall.
Okay.
But I can get that for you.
And then a general hunter can buy all 5 permits, correct?
2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Six permits for 5 weeks or weeky or whatever.
Oh, no, we're just talking about the fall.
Well, but
Oh,
I'm
you're talking about spring
moving on.
gobbler. Okay,
Go
yeah, yeah.
spring gobbler.
Yeah.
Currently, a farmer permit only gives you 1 week. Is that correct?
No,
No.
the farmer permit is good, valid for whatever period you have it in. No, the farmer permit is good for the entire season.
Farm permit is good for the entire season,
Just like you.
regardless of, and if you're a youth, it adds the youth day, but it's still only good for one.
But it's still only good for 1 turkey. So our farmer can only take 1 turkey in 5 weeks, where our regular hunters can take how many turkeys in 6 weeks?
29 if they bought
You
everything.
see where I'm going, Frank? Yeah. So the farmers are hosting the turkeys. They're limited to 1 turkey. We're taking away 50% of their opportunity by closing the fall season. Is there something we can do to change that?
The request came from the New Jersey Wild Turkey Federation, all of their groups.
I understand the request. Because I actually sat through this last week.
I know you did. The thing is, we could look at how do we expand opportunities.
How do we
for
expand the
farmers.
opportunity for a farmer? Because now they're only allowed 1 bird.
Yeah.
And these other people, other hunters, if they can take 22 birds, that's what I'm hearing.
Well, so could a farmer if he purchased the permits.
Well,
Just technically good.
so that's only my only comment.
And
No,
just
it's
to clarify, and you know, Mitch, I'm saying it more for the room, is that the request was a limit 2 birds in the spring season. Looking at the declining, concerns of the population, Fish and Wildlife staff were recommending the closure of the fall to protect the hens. Like, we're trying to get in front of this.
And I understand the fall closure. I guess I'm more looking at the farmer permit. We took away half the farmer's opportunity.
Mhm.
We're now 1 bird.
And we can look at it. I just want everybody to understand like why this is different from
Yeah.
2 birds.
And not a whole lot of people take 22 birds. There's probably nobody that takes 22 birds.
We take a look at farmer harvest in the fall, we'll bring it back to the game
Yeah,
committee.
bring it back to the game.
Yes, I'd appreciate that.
The other thing, if we're requiring ground blinds to have CID numbers, if we're looking at regulation simplification, why don't we require all blinds to have CID numbers? Just something else for discussion and consideration. If you're trying to simplify things across all platforms, that might be something else that you want to look at.
Do they have to take out deer blinds every day?
Probably wouldn't because we don't have a regulation.
Well, I don't know what the regulation
We're
is.
talking about just putting the
Yeah, we
number
just
on
asked
it,
Yeah.
for it to be marked.
not to take them out every
Yeah.
day. That's too
No,
simple.
just a CID number, that if someone's stumbled on it, they can say that this blind belongs to this particular person.
If it's, I guess I see logic, if it's important for turkey blinds,
Mhm.
which you're removing at the end of it every day anyway, so you could argue, do you even need it? Because there's probably someone sitting in it for
Yeah.
most of the time.
Well, I think the other argument is from enforcement that if it isn't removed, we know whose it
Then
is.
you know whose it is. That's fair.
Yeah.
So, we're now requiring CIDs on stands, correct? So blinds seem a reasonable extension of that. If there's a value, law enforcement sees a value to this.
I do.
So in the interest of keeping, we're trying to simplify here.
Yeah.
So having these unique requirements for particular seasons makes it more confusing to people because they don't know when they're in or when they're not, so.
So if we could, let's add that for consideration for the game code committee.
We're adding that to the WAM array.
Oh, are we?
Yeah, the tree stands and any blinds. That only applies to wildlife management.
Well, we're looking.
I would
for
imagine
private
folks
property,
would
too.
want to get in on this as well.
Are you talking about removal of the blind for deer
No,
also?
no, just a CID number. It's a somewhat innocuous number,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Okay. Proposing the opening day, change the start time from 8 AM to sunrise. Extend the season on semi-wild shooting preserves by 16 days to end on March 31st. And eliminate the option for the director and council to extend the season by 20 days, as it's no longer necessary. Remove restrictions to stocking pen-raised quail in South Jersey on wildlife management areas near previous quail focal areas. Prohibit dog training on WMAs stocked for youth day hunt during the youth week of pheasant hunting, and they're listed there. And remove list of specific wildlife management areas and just reference the New Jersey Fish and Wildlife website. And that's for our pheasant stocked areas.
Yeah.
Discussion.
Any discussion of any members of council on any of these items?
It makes sense to me.
Looks like everything's making sense.
Good.
All right, a couple of proposals for small game. The first would be to require harvest reporting of gray fox. Currently, we require harvest reporting for coyote only, and that's just so we can keep track of the population. Where hunters are primarily targeting the animal. And what we've seen with gray fox in the past several decades is a pretty significant decline in gray fox harvest over time. And so we just want to be able to better monitor what's going on with gray foxes. So that's why that proposal's in there. And then the second one is for air guns, to allow 25 caliber air guns for rabbit, squirrel, raccoon, opossum, and coyote hunting. Also fox too.
If you're looking at the discrepancy,
It's not there.
photos were added later. The slide is there,
Okay.
number 37. He went through, made some,
Yeah,
added
it's-
some photos.
You can blame me. I was doing this
Okay.
late last night, trying to add photos.
We missed
Good
each
photo.
other by
Good
15
photo.
minutes last week.
Yeah. And then the second proposal related to small game is to eliminate the special squirrel muzzleloader rifle season and the associated zones. And along with that, allow the use of muzzleloader rifles no larger than 36 caliber during the regular small game season.
That would be for squirrels only, not rabbits and.
Just the muzzleloader squirrel. There's no biological basis for there to be a separate season on them or management zones for them. My understanding was back in the day that was a safety concern somebody had brought up as far as why those management zones were created, but I don't think that concern no longer exists as far as I'm aware.
That would make sense.
Any questions?
Yeah, I do.
You can't, Tom.
Oh, sorry.
You're going to wait till the comment period at the end. It's your first time at council.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions from council? Next.
Okay. Trapping, a couple things on general trapping. The first is just kind of a housekeeping thing, where all traps are required to have a tag on them that has the CID number of the trapper. So we're just changing the language to specify that it has to be a metal tag. For body gripping traps, currently right now in tidal areas, you can use a body gripping trap set exposed above the water for muskrats only. But a lot of our river otter harvest comes in tidal areas, as well as some mink and even believe it or not, some beaver. So we'd like to add those three species to the list for which you can use those body gripping traps above the water surface. And then the last would be to allow 25 caliber rifle for dispatching animals that are caught in a trap.
Any questions?
Is that air rifle?
Yes.
Air only?
Yeah, sorry, that's a typo on there. So it'd be 25 caliber air gun.
Is durable and legible metal tag really an issue? I mean,
You know,
have people, because I'm thinking, you get a piece of engraved plastic
mhm.
or something like that, is that,
To be honest, I'm not sure who had originally brought this.
I came through law enforcement, and just because of the variety of materials that folks use and it's not legible,
Okay.
like duct tape and things like that. It's like-
I think
I was thinking like,
Yeah,
that wouldn't be a
Yeah.
metal tag, but
I think that would refer to, I've seen people do it, where they just take like one of these label printers, it's durable, but it's not metal, and they're very prone to being destroyed by anything that you catch.
The metal tag is quite simple. You put it on and then you actually wrap it around, so you don't even know it's there.
Yeah.
And then all a person has to do is unravel it and see,
Which you can't do with
which you
those
can't do with those
plastic
Mylar
label
type.
maker
Yeah.
things.
and those self-printing ones too, you don't know how well they last.
Yeah.
Between the different brands and stuff.
Yeah, that makes,
it. Open and write your name. in.
that's a durable metal, that's okay.
You had snap traps on this PowerPoint?
That's later in
Okay.
here, yeah.
Okay, we good?
So moving on to beaver, we have a number of proposals to changing the way that beaver trapping runs in the state. Just kind of by way of background, a lot of these proposals have kind of a conflict tint to them, or they're based in trying to address an increase that we have been observing in nuisance complaints, incidents of beaver damage. So our current season, just so we're all aware, the current season for beaver trapping runs December 26th to February 9th each year. If it's on a pheasant stock WAMA specifically, it's January 1st to February 9th. And so we have, the first proposal is to increase the season length to, on both ends of the season. So start December 15th and run to March 15th. Second proposal is to increase the bag limit from 8, which it is currently, to 10 beavers per permit. Third would be to increase the trap limit from 5 to 6 traps per day per zone. And that just keeps the ratio, our current ratio of traps to bag limit the same. And there's very little incidental take of otter. And the fourth would be to eliminate our check station requirements. So right now, if you catch a beaver, you're required to bring the pelt of that animal to a physical check station where it gets fixed with a seal of possession. So we used to collect a lot of biological data on the pelts that would come in, but we no longer really have a need for that data. And so we'd like to just require that folks report their harvest through the AHRS.
Sorry. For a sidebar. By
So-
executive discretion, sidebar.
Currently, we have a 200 permit quota that's set by statute.
Excuse me. Yeah, can you go back one slide? Yeah, sure. Or wait a minute, it's going to be a discussion point in two more slides, right? We'll wait till then, Peter.
Okay, very good.
I'm sorry.
So we're capped at 200 permits statewide. There's not a whole lot we can do about that at the moment. So, there have been a lot of creative ideas thrown out there of different ways that we could allow for more harvest of beaver. Just kind of by way of background, only about 50% of trappers each year harvest at least one beaver. Out of that 50%, average harvest is about 5 beavers per trapper. So the way our season runs currently, our maximum removal rate is about 15% of the beaver population statewide on an annual basis. But our current harvest rates are only around 5%. The whole point of that is that we feel that any increase in beaver harvest can be sustained based on kind of these parameters. So I just have a couple of graphs here just to give some background on why we thought these changes were justified. So the first is we periodically conduct a survey of beaver populations throughout the state. It's a stream side survey. It's been run so far in 4 different iterations. And what I want to focus on is those light blue graphs there. That's the most recent iteration of our survey. And the whole point of that is that we've seen quite an increase in our ability to detect beavers in different management zones over time. So we have 30 beaver management zones. If you see that there's no bar in any of those zones, either that's because it's a really low number or the area just wasn't suitable for beaver that was surveyed. But the whole point is when you look at zones 9, 10, 12, 14, zone 30, those are all the southern zones in the state. What we've seen is a real increase in our beaver population, particularly in the southern parts of the state. Second thing we've seen is we've seen a substantial increase in harvest of beaver over time. So that's what you see in that those red bars there. We actually broke an all-time record for beaver harvest this past trapping season with 773 beavers taken. We also beat or created the all-time record for in-season damage control permit harvest, which I think was around 85 to 90 beavers. We have also seen an increase in demand for beaver trapping. So you can see that that greenish bar there, that's our permit quota. So right now that's capped at 200 permits statewide. The red bar is how many people are applying for the lottery for winning one of those 200 permits. So we've seen an increase over time in demand, and it's higher right now. The level of interest is higher than what our current 200 permit quota can accommodate. And then lastly, generally, we've seen an increase in complaints, particularly in the southern parts of the state. So the blue line there, again, is our permit quota, capped at 200. And then the red line is our complaints. Now, these are only complaints that are reported either to USDA Wildlife Services or directly to our wildlife control unit. While we do see an increase in complaints through that stream of reporting, what we think is happening is that a lot of these complaints are just getting reported to the wrong source. So, if you're a landowner that has a problem with a beaver, you may call a trapper that you know. You may call your local, highway department. You may call the police department, local animal control operative. And if a complaint gets reported in any one of those, if it gets reported in any one of those ways, it may not come to us in the end. So we think that complaints are actually a lot higher than what that graph is showing, particularly in southern New Jersey, from everything that we hear anecdotally. So those are our 4 proposals. Basically everything that we've seen, whether it's our own stream survey, whether it's complaint data, demand for trapping in general, or our overall harvest, we think that the population is growing substantially. We believe that there are currently areas of the state where beavers are exceeding their tolerance limit amongst the people that live in those areas. So, that's kind of the whole impetus why we want to try to open things up as much as we can.
Assistant Commissioner has a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for giving me the floor. I'm looking at the restriction on stocked WAMAs, and we've talked about this numerous times as it relates to trapping. At one point, 8 years ago, we opened up WAMAs, pheasant stocked WAMAs for aquatic sets. I'm looking at this with a January 1st start time, that delayed start time. Granted, it's only, what we're talking about, a week, but there's only 2 days that we stock after the 26th. We stock the 27th and we stock the 30th. I get it. We're trying to manage risk here. But again, looking at trying to simplify things. Are the risks high enough for beaver style sets to be concerned about bird dogs on pheasant stocked WAMAs? We're already stocking December 30th. So January 1st, you're kind of already in that zone. So I'm just putting it out there. Maybe there's consideration for aligning those season dates and open it up. I understand the concern and we want to manage risks. Beaver sets, many of them are aquatic sets. So, and we've already tackled this issue for other types of sets and we've relaxed those delayed starts. So might be something to consider here.
Can you restrict the type of set as to the body gripping instead of the 220 or 330?
Well, 220 or 330 is a body gripping.
Yeah.
So I think the general concern is
Oh, then
over
should
cable
I say snare?
restraints.
Can you restrict it to a snare then?
I mean, certainly open for discussion. I think the way that beaver snares are set generally, I don't think you're really going to run into much incidental catch of other critters.
It's not really an upland set. So
No.
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
You're looking at a
Water set.
water
Yeah.
set versus a upland game dog.
Mhm.
I think is what we're two different land.
Yeah, but dog's got a nose.
Let's add that for discussion. We have two trappers here and they could get back and run that through the community, okay?
You know.
If you're moving the,
Then again, I
if you're gonna move the
go with him all
season
the
date up, are you planning on changing the application period or anything?
You know,
We're not that far, Barb.
yeah.
Not that far.
Keep us in the loop when you
Yeah.
have those
Yeah.
discussions.
We will. First need to know what it is.
I have another question. I'm not that familiar with the beaver trapping anymore, but I know that the limit on the permits is set at 200. Last time I remember when it was changed, I think they upped it to 160 at one time. But back then, I think we only had 300 trappers in the state. And now we have, what, 1,500?
1,300.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, would it be time to look at raising the number of permits issued?
Well, again, that's a statute.
Yeah,
So
we did run legislation through. We got it through both houses. We got that legislation on the governor's desk. That was, 3 years ago, I believe. Okay, and it got vetoed.
So it was already, okay.
Yeah, we already attempted that approach yet.
And do it again?
that's kind of why these
There is
are
a
all
bill
up
in
here.
right now according to
Yeah,
the
there's a
legislative.
bill, but there's no
It's not
movement.
moving, no.
Okay. I wasn't familiar how that worked.
Yeah.
Since it's been so long since I was involved with it.
Any further discussion? Thank you, Peter.
Yep. There's more. So, otter, proposal to eliminate requirement to surrender an otter carcass. So right now, if you catch an otter as a trapper, you have to bring that carcass into a check station. Historically, we've used that carcass to collect age distribution data, as well as sex distribution data, and all that to get an idea of what the otter population is doing in the state. What we've seen for probably the past 30 years is that the otter population is very stable. We don't have a need to collect that data anymore. And so we would like to eliminate the requirement to submit otter carcass.
Do you have harvest data offhand on otters? How many we get on a year?
Annually, it's around 45 to 50.
What would you do? Just mail them the CITES tags if they request them?
That's something we had to figure out on a practical level how that would work. There are states that do mail them. So whether or not we do that or we just, we do have a distribution of tags at the different regional offices. So whether or not we just coordinate on an individual basis with trappers to get them a tag, I don't know how that will all work, but figure that out.
We just bring them into their office or a local game warden. But sometimes the warden will come right to you if it's easier for them, or else you just, like I said, I usually just go to New Paltz, the office, and seal them.
Mhm.
Probably have a law enforcement chief deliver each one.
Yeah, that's.
On Sunday too. Whatever we decide, short of that last suggestion I just made, it'll be a lot less work than it is right now.
No, we've been trying to get rid of that
Right.
carcass business. Where the heck do you store them?
That's the
It's
problem.
no fun to process those. So, anyway. Okay. Next. Currently, there are 2 management zones for mink, muskrat, and nutria trapping. Just to clarify, we do not have nutria in the state as far as we are aware, but they are listed in the game code in case they ever show up. So the proposal is to eliminate the 2 trapping zones. They currently have separate start dates, and we would just make one statewide season that would fall in line with our general trapping, which runs November 15th to March 15th every year, or every season. And then snap traps. Proposal to allow the use of snap traps on dry land away from buildings for the trapping of weasels. So provided that the trap is recessed inside a box or a cubby set. This is actually an AFWA approved BMP trap type and setup for weasels. And just allows for another additional tool besides cable restraints that people can use to catch weasels.
Are there sizes on those? Do you have to specify as like a humane size for?
Size of the opening of the box.
I meant for the trap itself. So I'm picturing snap traps. You got everything from small to large.
Traps.
Yeah,
The rat size is what.
yeah. I'm just wondering if that needs to be specified.
The
Regular
BMP
snap rat
probably.
trap is this one that's used. The thing that should be restricted is the size of the opening.
So nothing big can get in there.
Yeah.
Right, which would also restrict the size of snap trap you could use
Yeah.
theoretically. But they're probably, we can look into that. There's probably in the AFWA recommendation, I'm sure they list what kind of.
Particular size, so it's
Size.
lethal.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think these two are just lumped in for discussion.
Any further discussion?
Let's see, okay. Moving on to coyote and fox hunting. So there are a few changes that have been proposed to the overall hunting season. And again, apologies if this slide isn't in your printout.
Oh, it's not for now? Okay.
But this basically, I just wanted to give a quick overview of what the current coyote hunting landscape looks like. So right now there are 3 ways that you can hunt a coyote or fox
Page 26.
in New Jersey. So we have a regular season that runs from the end of September to March 15th. You can use a bow or a shotgun. You can use dogs. We have a special permit season, which runs January 1st to March 15th every year. There are separate regulations for the day and night. So during the day, you can use a bow, shotgun, muzzleloader, rimfire, or centerfire from 17 to 25 caliber. For the nighttime portion, you can only use a shotgun, and your shot size is restricted from number 4 fine to T shot, and you cannot use a dog. The third way that you can harvest a coyote or fox is incidentally to firearm deer hunting or spring turkey hunting. So that's just an overview of what it currently looks like. So first 3 proposals here are to allow incidental harvest during early fall bow. So for those deer management zones that have an early start, right now, coyote, fox, general or regular hunting season starts when fall bow opens statewide. So this would just allow a hunter who's out there earlier in any of those management zones where it's allowed to take one of these animals. Proposal to add 25 caliber air guns as a weapon type that can be used for hunting them. And then to eliminate the permit requirement for the special permit season. So we don't really have any biological need for there to be a special permit season. My understanding is that was created in part to allow for the use of centerfire rifles for hunting coyotes in particular. But what we're proposing is to just have one regular season that's divided into day and night portions. So for the day, it would run August 1st to March 15th. You could use a bow, a shotgun, muzzleloader, rimfire, centerfire, and which you can all use right now. And then we would also add 25 caliber air gun on there as well. To align with our woodchuck regulations, we would say that there would be no centerfire rifles on WAMAs or parks August 1st to December 31st. We would expand the shot size that you could use for shotgun. So we would allow fine shot up to number 3 buckshot, and you could use dogs. And then the nighttime portion of this proposal would be January 1st to March 15th, the way it is currently now. Shotgun only, which is also how it's currently now. But the big thing is we would allow some additional shot sizes. So we would allow BB to number 3 buckshot. And then here they all are listed kind of in summary.
Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. And I talked to Frank and Ken before the meeting today. We allow incidental take of coyotes during turkey season. And to give some more opportunity, could we go August 1st to the beginning of turkey season without any effect on the, biological for coyotes by going to the beginning of turkey season with our coyote season? We already allow guys who are turkey hunting to shoot one. So why don't we allow the regular season to go to the beginning of turkey season with all of those weapons? And the same thing with the night season, go to the beginning of turkey season.
So what else is open during that time frame between?
March 15th to whenever.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Yeah, crow and woodchuck.
Crow and woodchuck?
Let's not forget that's when they have the kids.
Yeah, I think that's the main concern. Would be, yeah, that's their main pup rearing time period after March 15th to turkey season. So,
If pup rearing becomes a concern, then it's an ethical reason to
Yes.
not extend it that far.
Right.
And what we end up with is them in a lot of rehabbers.
yeah.
That's right.
All right, thanks.
Okay, hey, thank you.
That answer my question.
You want me to do this one, Lisa?
Yes,
Yeah,
please.
okay. So wildlife damage. Currently, the way our game code reads, and I think it's 5.21, there are a number of species that are listed, such as squirrel, coyote, fox, weasel, opossum, raccoon, that you can take if you're, or control if you're a property owner or a farmer in response to damage. So damage to crops, livestock, or property. So there's a proposal to add nutria, rabbit, muskrat, and mink to that list of species. Particularly for muskrat, there's some other special management concerns that would potentially apply, mainly to any type of property or environment where there's water control that has to be when there's concerns over water control, because muskrat can either clog up a waterway, they can burrow in the bank of a waterway and cause a collapse of some sort. So it's not just strictly damage to crops or livestock. That property damage is also a genuine concern. So we took a look at our muskrat data. Right now, for any of those species, again, we don't have nutria in the state as far as we're concerned, or as far as we're aware, but rabbit, muskrat, and mink, currently, if you have an instance of damage, you have to call us up, report the damage, and then we have to issue you a permit in order to control that animal. So we're just, in essence, eliminating that step and providing some language in the code for people to take care of it within the boundaries of that section.
Understandable?
I still can't see why the rabbit's in there. I don't agree with rabbits being under that.
So let's do this, because I know there's not a vote today, we're gathering information. Let's get a little more information on that rabbits, where it came from. I know Tony has it.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll bring that back to either the game committee or the council.
Okay. We may not have a whole lot of data, harvest data, but we can certainly.
Anecdotal, I think, is fine, because I can remember when that came up the first time.
Yeah.
I mean, this is it's still an option. It's just a matter of it's done through. We do the next one?
Yeah.
That's the last one. Okay, this one's an easy one. I mentioned it already. It's just to align, again, showing how creative everybody got as far as aligning what we could possibly align. This change would be all the harvest reporting deadline for all species except bear. Bear is the exception because it's the only one that we still have a mandatory in-person harvest reporting requirement, that they would all be due at 10 p.m. So no more 7 p.m. now, later in the season, 9 p.m. On this species, it's 7 p.m. This one's 8 p.m. It's 10 p.m. for everything but bear.
Weird catches.
Any questions?
It's easy, makes sense.
That's what we thought.
Yeah.
Okay, home stretch. This is it, and I'm gonna, the council has seen this already, and so I'm gonna breeze through it, and I do apologize for the difference because of the discussions yesterday about posting this online and more broadly distributing it. They asked staff to go back through and add information to it so that, because a lot of times you miss, you don't hear the whole presentation. So he did an excellent job of adding that, and I just hit the print button too soon. We were 15 minutes apart in our timing last night. So we'll reprint during the license restorations, and we will have the updated one for everybody leaving here today. If you'd like a couple extra copies, just nod and we'll print a couple extra copies as well. Okay, great. So the recodification, everybody else gets the interesting stuff, and I'm gonna get that up to clean up with the boring stuff, but very important. Anybody who goes to look at the game code now knows that if you want to go shoot a bear, the first line is, and I've said it 1,000 times, is thou shalt not take a bobcat. And if you want to know what you can shoot bear with, you have to go to page 57 and then go back to page 5.5 and then read up on what you can do. So we're pulling it all together. And we now have different subsections within the code too, so that information is even further consolidated. So we kick off with general provisions. We then go into closed season, so you no longer have to read through 117 pages to find out what you can't shoot or trap. It's right there up front. Then all the hunting species that are hunted, they appear in alphabetical order under hunting. Same with trapping. So those species under trapping will appear all in one section. We then will have all our myriad of special permits, which will all be in one section. And then cleaning it up. Our wildlife disease regulations are now buried in the bottom of the general provisions. We're going to be pulling that out and making its own subsection within the code itself. So hopefully a lot easier to navigate and everything in more than one place. Following along with our theme of consistency, we also worked out an approach so that for each of the individual species, we are using the same outline. So A in all the species subsections are the same. The Bs are all the season dates and hunting hours. The Cs are bag limits. And we get into manners, means, and methods. And then for those, because on some of the regulations now, some of that quota tables and zone information is like smack dab in the middle of the regulations. You have to page through 5 or 6 pages back before you get back into more in the regulations. That stuff is all going to be tailed into the end of each section. So with all this, and entire wildlife management staff have become rule writers. They've been working in court and reorganizing these through the various sections. Quite a bit of work, but man, it is a lot better to read. The one plus of this whole rule change and why it was important to do this now is that they were letting us do a rescind and a replace. So what it is we get to rewrite the entire game code the way we want it to look, instead of like typically we have to show we're deleting it from here and we're inserting it over there. Pretty much with rescind replace, we're like pulling out the old one and here's a new one all written in, and all we have to do is a table going this went there, this went there, and that's how we address all of that. So outside of the rewriting, it's actually a much simpler document and we get a lot accomplished by it. Now with all this restructuring, there are a number of sections that are kind of going away. The important component here is that the rules aren't going away. We're just taking them out of these separate subsections and rolling them into other areas. So dogs go into general provisions. Shotgun shells containing lead goes into migratory birds. Wild animals possession and killing, always kind of love that title in our game code. Firearms and missiles and bow and arrow, like all those will then be in their appropriate species section. So you go to bear, you know what you can use to hunt a bear. You go to turkey, you know what you have to, and you no longer have to be flipping back and forth, piecing it all together. With that, we're also finding as we're rolling this together, there's a lot of repetition, but there's a lot of new inconsistencies in the language that we're picking up. So it's really helping us identify those areas and kind of streamlining. So we're using the same context for similar types of rules. On the reverse end, we are creating a couple of new sections. Definitions, which is buried within the general provisions, will now be 5.2. So anytime you need a definition, you go right into that section. You can look it up. They're all listed alphabetically. Closed seasons for game species, like I indicated before, all in one section, so you can find it. We are taking community-based deer management permits out of the lengthy deer permit section and putting it where we can all find it. And there's also special provisions for hunters with disabilities that is split between like 2 subsections currently, between the wildlife and killing and then the firearms section. So we're pulling that together and putting that into one subsection. And then again, like I indicated before, we're bringing it up the rear with the wildlife disease surveillance and management. And so just an example of what this looks like, instead of going through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different areas of the code on those game animals with closed seasons, it all appears in one section. Section is short, but you basically know what is allowed to be hunted and what isn't. And these are currently, except for mourning dove, I think mourning dove is the one that just, again, sort of fell through the cracks. It doesn't appear anywhere within the game code, but it is a game species. So it's identified here as one with a closed season. You have a printout that shows the table of contents of the way the game code would be organized as part of the recodification, and also printed out shows what the species section looks like. Any questions?
I'd like to make a comment. Again, since Lisa's retiring and this is her last council meeting, when Lisa got promoted to bureau chief of freshwater fisheries, I've told this story to a few people, but I don't think I've said it in an open council meeting. The Attorney General, Neil Magnus, had asked me, it's time to recodify this fish code, it's horrible. I went down to Lisa's office, she was only up there 2 days. And I asked her, she says, of course it's horrible. She says, you gotta be kidding me, I'd love to do that job. Well, she finished that job in life. I got it over to Neil Magnus and he wanted to know who the attorney was that worked on it. So it's only fitting that if you think of the Greek terms, the alpha and omega, the beginning and end, she started her career, in administration with the fish code, and she's ending it now with the game code. I mean, who would figure that something would work out that way? But thank you, Lisa.
Well, everybody within the Bureau has taken a huge role in this. Also, law enforcement, Hunter Ed has been a huge plus in all the discussions as well. We've had a lot of documents going back and forth.
Any further questions?
So finally, a huge thank you to all of you. This is a tremendous undertaking. The staff have been so incredibly involved and into it, and they have really gone above and beyond all expectations with this. So I know when it finishes off, it's truly going to be a product that everybody can be proud of. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Lisa? I have a few copies.
Yes, and that is it. I know you have an extra slide or two in those. Those are just from other discussions, and schedule is